Think of it this way. Up to this point, you've helped him get acquainted with his spiritual father, Jehovah, but have you ever thought about helping him get to know his spiritual mother?
His spiritual mother? What do you mean by that?
Well, we often apply Proverbs 6:20 to families, but it also has a figurative application too. Go ahead and look it up and read it if you would. Proverbs 6 verse 20.
Okay. Proverbs 6:20, it says, "Observe, O my son, the commandment of your father, and do not forsake the law of your mother."
So in a sense, you've already acquainted Mr. Clark with his spiritual father.
Jehovah.
Right.
And Mr. Clark does seem to accept what he's learning from the Bible from his spiritual father.
But the Bible doesn't shed forth life-giving truths by itself.
That's right. That's why Jehovah's provided his organization.
Exactly. And that's why we want to direct people to the Kingdom Hall.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Thanks a lot, dear.
Look, I'm not the one that wanted to take a simple subject and complicate it.
You're the one that wanted to do a video about it.
Oh my
Lord.
goodness. Yes. Oh my goodness. Go ahead.
Well, what started us watching a video, and it was a video about talking about the history of goddesses and priestesses and how some of it, a little bit of it gets through even in the Judeo-Christian Bible.
Oh no. A lot of it gets through.
And they were talking about, these temple prostitutes, were they really prostitutes? And then they were talking about this group of women, these priestesses, and it was interesting because they mentioned all of them were named Mary. And then, of course, they went into how the Catholic Church, the Mother of God, Mary, the Virgin Mary,
which would be the divine feminine Jehovah's Witnesses. And as you saw in the beginning clip, Mother, the divine feminine.
Listen to your mother. Direct, your Bible studies to Mother, the organization. So that started us researching and looking things up, and oh my goodness, you want to talk about rabbit holes in every direction. So, do Jehovah's
1, 2, 3,
Witnesses...
4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10,
11,
12. We got 12 references here.
Did you get this one over here?
13.
And that was just quickly done this morning. There's so much more. My goodness. Now, I just want to mention before we get into this that even in the video we were watching the other night, they mentioned that there's a scripture or something may have been in the Apocryphas. I don't remember. He didn't really give a clear reference, but it talks about the women waiting for the priest to come out of the Holy Holies. And this was part of this group of priestesses.
Yep.
And it was interesting, he mentioned that Mary, the mother of Jesus, was not just an innocent shepherd girl. She was actually, if you look in the Apocryphas, she was actually orphaned at a very young age and taken to the temple.
Oh, did you just mention and reference the Apocryphas? You mean the non-inspired books of the Bible? Oh my!
So, take it for what it's worth. We're not telling you have to believe this. But...
But no! You do have to believe it because it's in your Judeo-Christian Bible. But you've never been taught how to really identify what's going on. Let me just kind of reference two things right here. In the story of Adam and Eve, Satan is the one that tempts the woman. Satan gives the woman divine knowledge of right and wrong, good and evil, right? It's the woman that gives this knowledge to the man. But in the Christian Greek scriptures, you see the exact story being played out with the woman at the well. It's a repetition of what happened back in the Garden of Eden, because it's Jesus that gives the divine knowledge of who he is to the woman at the well, and it's her that gives the divine knowledge to the men in Samaria.
Yeah.
It's the same story, but you've not been taught how to recognize the full scope and context of what's doing, because Watchtower has literally pretzel twisted this.
Yeah, and this is why we are putting this on our main channel instead of our second channel, because it's deeply intertwined with the Jehovah's Witnesses and their teachings. And when we get into this, you guys will notice, oh yeah,
You're going to see it.
I didn't think of it that way, because we didn't either. We did not either.
Because Watchtower has pretzel twisted it so much that when, in the opening clip, mother, you don't recognize Jehovah's Witnesses, that they are referencing the divine feminine. And that's even brought out in your Revelation book, even in picture.
Well, we'll get into that. But let's start with the oldest first. I have Russell's. This is Volume 3, Studies in the Scriptures. Thy Kingdom Come. I'm afraid to open it too far. It's going to break and fall apart. On page 297. Let's see. It's the first full paragraph. Well, about 2/3 of the way down. As for Isaiah 54, 1 through 8, the Apostle Paul has thrown the light of superhuman wisdom upon it. And they're talking about the restoration of Israel, the spiritual Israel. And has applied it to spiritual Zion, okay? Our mother, or covenant.
There you go, right there. They get away from the divine feminine mother or covenant.
Okay? Symbolized by Sarah, the fleshly seed of Abraham. Abraham had been cast out from being heir of the promise, and the true seed, Christ, typified by Isaac and Rebecca, had been received as the only seed of promise. Now we know that's a bunch of hooey. I mean, that's pretzel twisting.
Pretzel twisting.
But they believed this clear up into the 80s.
Yeah,
that
yeah.
Sarah, symbolized Mother Zion.
Yes.
It gets better, guys.
See, here again, what we're trying to help Jehovah's Witnesses recognize the simplicity of the yin and the yang, the up and the down, the in and the out, the male and the female, the divine male and the divine female. Just look at your 12 zodiac signs. There's Virgo, the divine feminine. It's always been there.
The Virgin.
And it goes back so far. It's unbelievable. Friends, when I was doing my videos from the book, the Old Testament, remember some of the statements I said? It appears to me all they did was take ancient mythology, laws and law codes from everybody else around them, and they combined them and they assigned themselves as the keeper of all of this. It's a deep, deep subject, and it goes so far back in the human history that when you look at most of your religions, your ancient religions, you will always see the divine feminine.
Now, we're going to be reading some stuff in Watchtower literature, and it mentions Inanna. Now, that goddess, divine feminine, goes all the way back to the clay Sumerian tablets. From the very beginning of when we first have records of human civilization.
Which bleeds down into Egypt and Ishtar. Isis, which bleeds down into
Astarte,
the Jewish Christian Bible when they were worshiping the Queen of Heaven.
Well, let's read that. Okay, I've got the large print reference Bible here. Jeremiah 7:18. The sons are picking up sticks of wood, and the fathers are lighting the fire, and the wives are kneading flour dough in order to make sacrificial cakes to the Queen of the heavens. And there is a pouring out of drink offerings to other gods for the purpose of offending me. Now, there's a couple of footnotes. There's an asterisk and then the pound sign. So when you go to the asterisk, it says, or women. And then the hashtag or pound sign says, to the Queen of Hebrew, Limelecheth, to the army.
Oh, Lilith.
To the worship of.
See,
So this is in reference, the Queen of Heaven.
they were worshiping the divine feminine.
But as Jehovah's Witnesses, how many of us stop to think, Queen of Heaven? Okay, well, they must be talking about Ishtar, because we learned about Easter being a pagan holiday and worshiping the goddess Ishtar and all of this. But did we ever stop and think, wait a tick, there's more of this in the Bible?
Well, when you Jehovah's Witnesses wake up, make sure you get into the King James Version. Make sure you get one of these. Because even in King James Day, they were still worshiping the Queen of Heaven. Only it was under a different name. Because she's referenced. And I would like to thank the guy that brought this to our attention. Because the guy, you just don't know how we were already researching this, and this falls right into place. Acts chapter 12 and verse 4. And when he had apprehended him, he put him in prison. Now this is talking about Paul. And delivered him to the four quaternions. I'm not sure how that word quaternions.
Quaternions?
Quaternions, it would be like a quadrant of soldiers. Quaternions of soldiers to keep him, intending after Easter to bring him forth to the people. What is a pagan word, a pagan reference doing in the King James Version Bible? What is that doing that doesn't belong there? Because you read a lot of other Bibles and it says Passover. Oh, wait a minute. Passover, Easter, it's one and the same celebration, friends. It's the same thing. We've done a video on this already. But there again, Jehovah's Witnesses, make sure when you wake up, you get into a real Bible and go to Acts chapter 12 and verse 4 and note that there is a reference to Easter, Ishtar, the mother, the Queen of Heaven. Oh, Jehovah's heavenly wife.
Well, the thing is that gives you another rabbit hole because
Exactly.
Are the Jehovah's Witnesses right about the celebration of Easter? It gets into fertility and, renewal and the worship of the goddess Ishtar. And isn't it funny that it falls right on the same as the Jewish Passover?
Which,
there is a connection.
And when you look at the rituals involved with all of this, whether it be the Jewish Passover or the worship of Isis or Ishtar, the mother goddess, they both involve cakes, bread, and wine.
Yeah. Now, Mikey's favorite little book here, Reasoning from the Scriptures, we're all familiar with this. We used to do this out in field service to the door all the time. On page 179 about the origin of Easter and its customs associated with it. And I'm just going to read a little bit here. In the book, The Two Babylons by Alexander Hislop, we read, what means the term Easter itself? It is not a Christian name. Okay? Now, they have a lot of dots in here. So, you know what? Guess what? We just happen to have the book, The Two Babylons by Alexander Hislop. What's interesting about this book, that back in like the 70s and 80s, this was available through your Kingdom Hall literature counter because the Jehovah's Witnesses used to use it to show that the cross, was a pagan symbol. And of course, like in here, it's showing that Easter is a pagan, ancient worship of, the divine feminine and the goddesses. But they had to get rid of it from the Kingdom Hall because people were reading it and saying, wait a tick.
Especially the part about the cross, because when he associates the cross with ancient the ancient Egyptian Ankh, as a pagan symbol, what Watchtower doesn't tell you, and I did a video on this a long time ago, and it's probably somewhere buried on our first channel that we haven't re-uploaded it yet. But what this guy does in his book, The Two Babylons, he actually separates the Ankh from the Christian cross. And heaven forbid a Jehovah's Witness spend time researching, they would readily see what Watchtower did when they destroyed the Christian cross and swapped it for the steiros, the upright stake.
Or sacred pole.
Or the sacred pole, the phallic pole.
Yeah. Now, before we get into the Watchtower literature on this stuff about, where it is in Watchtower teachings today, I just want to mention that I have the Insight book here, Volume 2. And they actually have the Queen of Heaven here on page 721. So on page 721, Queen of the Heavens. It's short. I'm just going to read this. The title of a goddess worshipped by apostate Israelites in the days of Jeremiah.
See how they have to qualify it? Apostate Israelites.
So this means that they're admitting that, yes, the Israelites did worship the Queen of Heaven, the divine feminine. And Mike did a video, a while back about, Jehovah, according to the Canaanites, Jehovah had a wife.
In Ashtaroth. And it was scratched on clay pots found in the Mount Sinai region.
Yeah, so we know they were worshiping, the Queen of Heaven. Although the women were primarily involved, apparently the entire family participated in some way in worshiping the Queen of the Heavens. And I just read Jeremiah 7:18, and they quote that the worship of this goddess had a stronghold on the Jews, is reflected by the fact that those who had fled down to Egypt after the murder of Governor Gedaliah attributed their calamity to their neglecting to make sacrificial smoke and drink offerings to the Queen of the Heavens. The prophet Jeremiah, though, forcefully pointed out the wrongness of their view. Jeremiah 45, verses 15 through 30. The scriptures do not specifically identify the Queen of the Heavens. It has been suggested that this goddess is to be identified with the Sumerian fertility goddess Inanna. Now remember, I just mentioned that.
Watchtower knows, guys.
Babylonian Ishtar. The name Inanna literally means Queen of Heaven.
But
see, and this was the same goddess all down through the ages. The goddess in Egypt, I believe, was called Isis. It's the same goddess all down through history.
And for you Jehovah's Witnesses, now it's Mother, the organization. See, how many times have you Jehovah's Witnesses had questions and you go to your elder, thinking you figured it all out, and the elder would say, well, you got to wait on Jehovah's organization. You don't want to run ahead of Jehovah's organization. This
Mother.
is referencing Mother. You don't want to run ahead of the Mother, the Queen of Heaven. God, it's so simple, but yet it's so deep.
Yeah. Well, we're going to be going more into, Mother and, all that. Okay, back to the Insight book here. The corresponding Babylonian goddess Ishtar was qualified in the Akkadian text by the epithets Queen of the Heavens and Queen of the Heavens and of the stars. So is that a reference now to the zodiac? It appears that Ishtar worship spread to other countries. In one of the Amarna tablets, now remember, Amarna was the city that Pharaoh Akhenaten started worshiping the one God. The Aten.
God, this is getting deep.
Tushratta, writing to Amenephis III, mentions Ishtar, mistress of heaven. In Egypt, an inscription of King Horemheb, believed to have reigned in the 14th century BCE, mentions Astarte, Ishtar, Lady of Heaven. A fragment of stele found at Memphis from the reign of Mertapata, Egyptian king believed to have reigned in the 13th century BCE, represents Astarte with the inscription Astarte, and I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, a Lady of Heaven. In the Persian period at Syene, modern Aswan, Astarte was surnamed the Queen of the Heavens. The worship of the Queen of the Heavens was practiced as late as the 4th century CE. Now this is the same time that the Nicene Council and all of these guys got together and was working on the Bible, deciding what's going to be in it and editing it.
Holy Mary, Mother of God.
Exactly.
You guys got it?
That's where the Virgin Mary, Mother of God, and the Catholic Church believes that. They venerate her.
They pray to her. The Queen of Heaven is now transformed from all of these pagan cultures, if you will, and has re-emerged as Mary, the Mother of God.
Yeah. So going back to here, it was, worshipped in the sea. In about 375 CE, in the treatise Panarion, Epiphanius states, some women decorate a sort of chariot or a four-cornered bench, and after stretching over it a piece of linen, on a certain feast day of the year, they place in front of it a loaf for some days and offer it up in the name of Mary.
Well, that sounds too much like the Passover celebration. You go into your kingdom halls on a certain day, and they have a table with a white linen cloth.
Which is the same time of year.
And on that tablecloth is bread and wine, a cake and wine. It's all the same thing, friends.
Okay, back to the Insight book. Then all the women partake of this loaf, connected these practices with the worship of the Queen of the Heavens presented in Jeremiah, and quotes Jeremiah 7:18 and 45 verse 25.
Now, do you just comprehend what you just read to everybody?
Well, yeah.
See, all the women partake of the loaf. Why is it that the 144,000 are referred to as the bride class? You have men, the governing idiots, partaking in a ritual that is clearly designed for the priestesses worshiping the God of heaven, the divine feminine. See, only the women partake, but yet you men, you 144,000 who contort the whole scripture about the divine feminine, you even put the 144,000 as the bride of Christ, and you're participating in a female-derived ritual.
To the Queen of Heaven.
Exactly.
Ishtar, Easter, Passover.
I always thought there was a little femininity going on with Toni Morris.
Now, we're only touching on the surface of all of this. If anyone wants to go research this, please do, But, there's just so much that we're just trying to give you a little bit here.
Well, speaking of touching the surface, I'm going to touch the surface again.
Touch the eyeball of Watchtower.
Yes. You see, friends, when we all went from door to door thinking we had the absolute truth in our hands, because, we would say, well, this just isn't Watchtower saying this. This is like, the Encyclopedia Britannica. We all revered the Encyclopedia Britannica as, an authoritative book. I found an error. See, I read you guys that scripture in Acts 12:4, right from the approved Christian King James Version, didn't I? And it used the word Easter, didn't it? I want to read from the Encyclopedia Britannica. You'll find this on page 179. The Encyclopedia Britannica comments, there is no indication of the observance of Easter festival in the New Testament. I just read a frickin' scripture. It's right there. They held Paul until Easter. So even the Encyclopedia Britannica can also get it wrong. But no, see, you Jehovah's Witnesses, there's no need for you to do research because we have qualified brothers to do it for you. They didn't even check their references when they put that reference to the Encyclopedia Britannica saying there is no comment, there is no indication of the observance of Easter festival in the New Testament. They use the word Easter right in Acts 12:4.
Yeah. Now, when we were watching that documentary a few nights ago, and he started talking about these women priestess and, you know, how it was referenced all down through history, I wasn't sure if I believed any of it. It's like, well, I guess I have to do research.
No, there's no need for you to do research because, you know, if it's on the internet, it's got to be true.
You know, so it's like, okay, well... So when I started looking into this, and it was like, oh my goodness.
It's all there.
I had no idea. I learned something new this morning. Now, all of us have the potential to learn something new every day. And as a JW, I heard this, but I never thought anything about it. Now, just think about what I said about this group of women that were the priestesses. And this guy mentioned in his documentary that they were the ones that did the veil. They made this veil. And this is in the Jewish literature. They would make this curtain that was between the holy and most holy. And he said they would make 2 a year because it had to be constantly replaced. You know, because it would just start wearing and...
Well, moths
and everything else. So it was up to this group of women. And they did other things. They made the bread that the high priest would use. So, you know, these priestesses had jobs. You know, they had important roles to do. But see, we were never taught this as Jehovah's Witnesses. Yeah. Who did make the bread and the curtain? I never thought about this. And then I found it in here, in the Watchtower Library. And I grabbed the Bond volume here. This is the 2014 Watchtower and Awake. So this isn't that old. It's not old light. The January 1st, 2014 Watchtower. Page 11. Did you know?
I just have to say, guys, I am chomping at the bit because there is so much here. I mean, it's like... Hurry up, Kim, hurry up. But it's like, no, we can't really rush through this because it's a very deep, important subject, and it all connects to the divine feminine. But you have to understand how Watchtower works to destroy it, even though they endorse it.
Yeah. Do you think they're going to teach all of the Jehovah's Witnesses that there was a group of women that had very important jobs and they were considered priestesses? No, they're not going to teach that. They're going to call them temple prostitutes.
Exactly, and that's how they stop the Jehovah's Witness from researching this subject because they've already indoctrinated the whole concept of temple prostitutes.
Yeah, exactly.
They have to demonize the women, and by doing that, they demonize the divine feminine.
Yeah, Mary Magdalene. Oh, she was a prostitute, you know, when she found Jesus and started listening to him. Okay, now think about that, okay? If there was a group of these women, these priestesses, and they had a very important part of the temple worship, okay, now just keep that in mind while I read this. And like I said, this is from the 2014 Watchtower, page 11. Did you know? In Jesus' day, how were temple contributions made? We just think of, oh, they just had contribution boxes. Okay? Now, listen carefully to the way Watchtower words this. The treasury of the temple was located in the court of women. I never knew there was a courtyard of women specifically in the temple. And
priestesses.
According to what I found about it, it was actually like 14 steps above the courtyard of the Gentiles. So it was above. It was like higher up towards the holy, part of the temple. It was a shock to me. Courtyard of women.
Hey.
But doesn't that show how important?
You're welcome.
You jerk. Okay.
Can you guys tell we're having fun doing this?
So he's sitting there drinking coffee, watching YouTube videos while I'm doing all the work. The book, The Temple, Its Ministry and Services says. Now they don't tell you who wrote this book.
That's right.
And it's an old book. Guess what? I found it.
You don't need to spend much time in studying and research. We got qualified brothers to do it for you.
Yeah. So you may be thinking, what the heck was this court of women? Okay? In this book, now this is what you're quoting it. All around ran a simple colonnade, and within it, against the wall, the 13 chests or trumpets where contributions were placed. This was the treasury. This was something very important, and there was 13 chests. The chests were called trumpets because they were narrow at the top and wide at the bottom. Each chest was labeled for a different type of offering, and the funds collected in them were earmarked for specific uses. Jesus was in the court of women when he observed many people, including a needy widow, offering contributions. Luke 21, 1 and 2. Well, when you read those scriptures, Jesus was in that courtyard teaching. He was in the courtyard of women teaching. He was in that part of the temple.
He was with the divine feminine.
And if you think about it, if, the Apocryphas are correct, and his mother was part of this priestess group, maybe he was there visiting her. I don't know.
Could have been visiting her.
But this was something new I learned. The court of the women, and the treasury was in the court of the women. That is really important. Did Watchtower ever teach us any of this?
Or the true significance of this? No, because they all want to direct it, even though they call the organization Mother, they all want you Jehovah's Witnesses to believe that the blessings are coming from Jehovah. Or, Jehovah's organization, but you still view it as a male entity. You do not view it from the perspective of the divine feminine.
Now, we all know what Watchtower teaches. That, the bride of Christ is the 144,000. You all remember this. The Revelation book starts in chapter 27. God's kingdom is born. Page 177. Paragraph 3. Down at the bottom. Jehovah thus claims the child as his own. And they just quoted Revelation 12, 1 and 2. And we all know this. This is the woman that had, she was arrayed with the sun, and the moon was beneath her feet, and on her head was a crown of 12 stars.
Oh, you mean Virgo. I mean,
and she was
Virgo.
pregnant.
Yeah, exactly.
And she was pregnant.
Wait a minute, didn't we just go through something like this on our other channel?
Okay, Jehovah thus claims the child as his own. Therefore, the woman that John sees must be Jehovah's symbolic wife.
His Ashtaroth.
Okay, now remember that. Okay? This woman that is seen in heaven, that's pregnant and about to give birth to this male child, Watchtower says it must be Jehovah's symbolic wife. See, they have to make all of this figuratively symbolic. And that's the way we were taught as Jehovah's Witnesses.
What does it symbolize? You don't realize that what Watchtower is doing is they're still validating ancient divine woman worship.
Now, I had an argument with someone who was talking about that, the Jews needed to build the third temple in order for the Messiah to come and that whole thing in New Jerusalem. Okay? And my argument is that no, New Jerusalem is in heaven. And it's represented, by other things. It is not coming to earth. Now, over on page 178 of the Revelation book, I remember I read this, and this is why it's highlighted. When we were first waking up in 2012, I read this, and it was like, oh my goodness, we never caught this before. Paragraph 5. Exactly what, though, is Jerusalem above? Since Paul spoke of her as above, and John sees her in heaven, she is clearly not an earthly city. Neither is she the same as New Jerusalem, since that organization is the bride of Christ, not Jehovah's wife. Now let that sink in for a minute. Jehovah and Jesus, according to Watchtower, both have a wife.
That's right.
Yeah, they say it's figurative and symbolic.
But it's still
But is
perpetrating the ancient belief, the ancient worship of the divine feminine.
See, and this is why some of this gets through in the Bible, and Watchtower has to make their own symbology of what it means. And let's face it, most religions cannot explain what any of this means.
It's because they've all gotten away from the divine feminine.
Yeah. Notice that she is crowned with 12 stars. The number 12 is associated with completeness in an organizational setting. It also represents the zodiac.
Yeah, in an organizational setting. You're right, Watchtower, because the zodiac is organized. It is in a organized setting.
Now there's an asterisk, and when you go down to the footnote, it says compare the 12 tribes of fleshly Israel, the 12 apostles, the 12 tribes of spiritual Israel, and the 12 gates, the 12 angels, the 12 foundation stones of the New Jerusalem.
Bullshit.
12, 12, 12, 12. That's all I'm saying.
There's 12 zodiacs.
Hence, these 12 stars seem to indicate that she is an organizational arrangement in heaven.
She is. She's one of the zodiacs. She's the queen of heaven. She's the mother of heaven. Of course.
Just as ancient Jerusalem was on earth, Jerusalem above is Jehovah's universal organization of spirit creatures that acts as his wife, both in serving him and in producing offspring. Aren't you glad they're here to clarify these things for us? Now, not to be confused with the holy city, New Jerusalem. Okay, so there's the Jerusalem above and the New Jerusalem. Two separate cities.
And two separate women.
This is on page 275. The Lamb's marriage is at hand. Likewise, the holy city, New Jerusalem, made up a bride of 144,000 members. So we've got that straight. Jehovah's wife is the spirit creatures and his organization, his heavenly organization. This woman, New Jerusalem, is the bride of Christ and is the 144,000. Clear as mud? Over in paragraph 15, page 276. The Lamb's wife has prepared herself, and then they go on to talk about the 144,000, and of course that's them. Page 277, then the marriage is performed, the heavenly bride being attended on earth by her virgin companions, the great crowd. But what's interesting about page 277, you guys see that picture? Yep. The divine feminine.
The divine feminine.
Yep, the divine
Now,
feminine.
what a lot of us miss completely about the divine feminine, and here again, it's easy to be misled about the divine feminine when you only research this from the perspective of the male perspective, like Watchtower. See, they will refer to the organization as mother, 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 but yet it still does not get through that when they say mother, 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 they're really saying, well, it's Jehovah. It's Jehovah. But in your Revelation book on page 317, here's the picture. This is the divine feminine.
See the rays coming out of?
Blessing mankind.
See, now, Watchtower spins that this way. Page 317, paragraph 8. Only those anointed Christians who truly wash their robes so as to be clean in Jehovah's eyes are privileged to go to the trees of life. So there's more than one, apparently. That is, they receive the right and title to immortal life in their heavenly position. After their death as humans, they gain entrance into New Jerusalem by resurrection. So, they're still likening it to, God's spirit creature organization. But Watchtower is showing this as the divine feminine.
See, and the thing is, friends, like I said, ancient concepts that have filtered all the way down even to the book of Revelation. This whole divine concept, it's nothing new. Go get your New World Trash translations. Isaiah chapter 60. See, we're all given this idea that the revelation to John was something new. No, it was not. The divine feminine is even referenced in the book of Isaiah. The most complete book found in the Dead Sea Scrolls, the book of Isaiah, that Isaiah, that's who I'm talking about. When the Apostle John is talking about she will bless mankind, however that scripture is worded, he didn't get that revelation from Jesus. He took it from Isaiah. Right here, Isaiah chapter 60, starting with verse 1. So let me get my glasses here. Isaiah chapter 60, verse 1. Arise, O woman, shed forth light. Do you remember the picture? In Revelation, she's shedding forth light, isn't she? That's nothing new. Isaiah talks about it. For your light has come, and upon you the very glory of Jehovah has shone forth. He's letting the divine woman shine forth. Arise, see, arise, O woman. Verse 2, for look, darkness itself will cover the earth, and thick gloom and national groups. But upon you, the divine feminine, arise, O woman. Okay? But upon you Jehovah will shine forth, and upon you his glory will be seen, and nations will certainly go to your light, the light of the divine feminine, and kings to the brightness of your shining forth. The Apostle John didn't get a new revelation. He's just copying what was written in Isaiah about the divine woman. And how do we know it's the divine woman? Because the Israelites were familiar with Jehovah and his Ashtaroth. They were already familiar with all the other nations around them having a divine feminine to worship. So they just incorporated it into their own system of worship. So here again, guys, it's nothing new. The worship of the divine feminine is even carried right down into Watchtower today, but you Jehovah's Witnesses have not been taught to look at it as the divine feminine, the goddess worship. When Watchtower says in the opening clip, have you introduced him to Mother? It's the divine feminine.
And a lot of religions do this. And like we said, at the beginning, the Catholic Church, all of us are familiar with them actually worshiping Mary, who gave birth to Jesus, as the Mother of God.
Yeah. We found another article in the Watchtower, February 15th, 1980, page 14, and it's entitled Festival Illumination. The first paragraph. The Festival of the Booths was an occasion for special illumination of the city of the great King Jehovah. Nightly, in Herod's temple, in the courtyard of the woman, see, that lay east to the altar, there was an unusual display. And Kim referenced that earlier. But see, Watchtower even carries that down into the 1980s. They knew who these priestesses were. They know it.
Now think about this. The women's version of Freemasonry is called the Eastern Star.
This
Just another
lay
rabbit hole.
east of the temple.
Just another rabbit hole.
Okay, so when I started looking for some references to Jehovah's Wife, I went to the 1985 bound volume. Now it's interesting that in this particular bound volume, in the year 1985, they had 2 articles written in depth about Jehovah's Heavenly Organization, the wife-like organization.
His wife.
His wife. And then they concluded the end of the year with a question from readers. Now, again, all of this has already been covered by what we've already done right here, right now. It's already been covered. But I did find something of special interest here in this March 1st, 1985.
15th.
March 15th, thank you. March 15th, 1985 Watchtower, page 11, paragraph 7.
The name of the article is Working with the Organizer of All the Universe.
And it's under the subheading Early Views of Organization. I found this interesting because they re-reference a couple of Watchtower's books, The New Creation and Thy Kingdom Come. So paragraph 6 says, interestingly, the book Thy Kingdom Come, published in 1891, said regarding these anointed ones of the new creation. As for Isaiah 54, 1 through 8, the Apostle Paul has thrown the light of superhuman wisdom upon it. Now, Kim already read that, okay? But they re-quote it in this particular article. Verse 7, pay particular attention. Okay? So it goes on. This statement has nothing to do with the Zionist World Organization founded by Theodore Herzl in 1897. That organization dealt with Jerusalem below, here on earth, not Jerusalem above, the mother of the Christian congregation. There again, there's another reference to the divine feminine. Mother of the Christian congregation. Mother of the Jehovah's Witnesses. You're not to confuse that with, the Zionist World Organization. And then it goes on.
Even though they could have similar wording, they're not the same.
That's right. But here comes the pretzel twisting once again. The book, Thy Kingdom Come, did not go on to develop the fact that the husbandly owner of the mother of the Christian congregation is God, who was pictured by Abraham. Pretzel twisting. Jehovah is married. See, Jehovah is married not to the Abrahamic covenant or the new covenant, but to Jerusalem above, pictured by Isaac's mother, Sarah. More pretzel twisting. Like her, as a mother, the Jerusalem above must be something alive and having a personality. Do you see how they are actually endorsing the divine feminine? But we as Jehovah's Witnesses, and even you Jehovah's Witnesses today, had not a clue what they were doing. Now, going to the question from readers on the same subject, obviously, the 2 study articles confused the issue. Otherwise, they wouldn't have had a question from readers, right?
Apparently.
Okay. October 15th, 1985. Question from readers. Are the remnant of the Lord's anointed on earth a part of Jehovah's heavenly wifely organization, Jerusalem above? Anointed ones on earth can be spoken of as the visible part of God's organization, his universal family of intelligent creatures. As individuals who are born again, interesting, they believe in the born again concept.
Yeah.
They become spiritual sons of Jehovah. Jehovah is their father. Yet, they have also a mother. For the Apostle Paul wrote that the Jerusalem above is our mother. This must be a reference to a heavenly organization of loyal spirits whom Jehovah views as his figurative wife. When anointed Christians receive their heavenly reward, they actually take their place in that heavenly organization. The anointed remnant on earth are not yet literally part of Jerusalem above, but because of their unique position as spiritual sons, with the prospect of heavenly life, and because they represent God's heavenly wife, you represent the divine woman. At times, Jehovah includes them in a reflective way in directives, prophecies, promises, and words that comfort addressed to his wifely organization in heaven. Reflective way in directives, prophecies, promises. The generation of 1914 will by no means pass away until all these things happen, including the Great Tribulation. Apparently, that's why Watchtower has a failed prophecy, because they're not reflecting the divine woman.
They're not listening or honoring their mother?
They're not honoring the mother. Be wise, my son, and listen to the voice of your mother. But yet, they reflect a prophecy that failed. So they must have reflected Jehovah's wrong prophecy about the time of the end.
Now I'm going to use the King James here. Book of Proverbs, first chapter. Now, we were constantly hammered as children of Jehovah's Witnesses. Honor your father and your mother. You know, show respect. Honor your father and your mother. And we were always taught this as our human parents. But if you go to this first chapter of Proverbs, look at the context. Okay? I'm just going to touch on a few verses here. Look at the context. Okay? This is a proverb of Solomon. We know that. Okay? Verse 7, the fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge, but fools despise wisdom and instruction. So it's talking about wisdom and instruction. Verse 8, my son, hear the instruction of thy father, and forsake not the law of thy mother. Watchtower always use this single scripture that they take out of context. Because when you go on to read this, and it's talking about this wisdom, look at verse 20. Wisdom crieth without, she uttereth her voice in the streets. Wisdom, the goddess Sophia.
Sophia, the female.
She crieth in the chief place of concourse, in the openings of the gates, in the city she uttereth her words.
The divine feminine.
This isn't talking about human parents.
No, it ain't.
This is talking about wisdom. The divine mother. Oh my goodness.
And it's not Jehovah's heavenly organization either.
Yeah. Yeah. But read that first chapter of Proverbs and think this is not human parents. This is talking about wisdom and understanding.
And also reflect that at that time in Israel's history, they also associated Yahweh with having a wife, the divine feminine. In, out, up, down. the yin and the yang, the male and the female, the divine male, the divine female. Here's something that I just want to throw in here real quick. Because, you know, when Jehovah's Witnesses wake up and they start doing their research and all this other stuff, they'll sit here and they'll do a video about John 1:1 and how Johannes Grieber, you know, messed with the scriptures, messed with the text, you know. In the beginning was the Word was with God, the Word was a God, and or the Word was God. And they'll again reference Johannes Grieber's book. I have his book. I have read his book. And in that book, when you read that book, the angel that he's the demon that he's in contact with very plainly lays out that there are female angels. The divine feminine. It's all right there. You just have to do your research.
Yeah, and I just want to give you guys something else real quick that you might want to research. Another one of those rabbit holes. My goodness. Okay, now we know the book of Enoch. Now some religions are putting it back into their Bibles.
It's actually gaining credence.
Yeah, exactly. And I know there's several that have told us, you know, several Christians who have told us, oh, well, those are apocryphas. They're forgeries. You know, they're not inspired of God. And I go back to the same thing I've been saying all along. If they are not inspired of God, in my book of Enoch, right at the beginning, it says that there was 10 manuscripts of the book of Enoch found in with the Dead Sea Scrolls. That's when they realized that the New Testament was not, that the book of Enoch was not taken from the New Testament and written in the 2nd century AD. No, that's when they discovered that it's actually much earlier, from maybe the 2nd century BC, because it was in Qumran before Jesus was even born. So this book of Enoch was not taken from the New Testament because it wasn't even written yet. So it says, if all of these references in the New Testament was taken from the book of Enoch, then isn't it worth investigating? Okay? Now, for those of us who have read the book of Enoch, we know about the Watchers. And many of us feel, oh, well, that was the fallen angels, you know, the demons. Well, then I gotta ask, I think there was good and bad watchers, and I can prove that in your own Bible. Daniel 4:13. Now this is something else to investigate. If you want to say that the book of Enoch is wrong, and that these watchers, oh, that's just, you know, mythology. That's just a story. Okay? Listen to this. Daniel 4:13. I continued beholding in the visions of my head upon my bed, and look, a watcher. A watcher, even a holy one. So this is a holy one. A holy watcher.
Holy watchers, Batman!
Coming down from the heavens themselves. Now there's an asterisk, because I'm reading it from Watchtower's Reference Bible. Go down the asterisk. Daniel 4:13, a watcher. Aramaic, angel. So, just something else you can investigate. But, you know, if the book of Enoch calls them these watchers, then why does your Judeo-Christian Bible use that word too?
That's right.
Just like we showed, you know, Mike read in the King James, they use the word Easter.
Easter. So,
My goodness. And,
Well-
and that's just touching the surface. There's so many different levels. to this, just like the ancient secret mysteries, like we've talked about before. There's 3 levels.
3 levels.
There's just the surface stuff, which we just touched on. Then there's the deeper research, and then you get down into the ancient secret mysteries. And then that's when you get into like the female, divine feminine, and these group of priestesses.
Well, that's exactly what Watchtower has done, is they've buried in their own personal level of bullshit the divine feminine. That's what they've done. Now, I got a question for you, dear. Yesterday we was traveling. On Valentine's Day. I did take her out.
You took me out to lunch.
To lunch on Valentine's Day. Yes, she's still my sweetheart. We were actually making notes because I had already done a lot of research on this, and we want everybody to realize that the notes that we made.
We didn't have paper while we were traveling, but we had just stopped and got the mail, so
all of our notes is just on this one side of this envelope. So let's just see. Okay, we covered the three level of ancient. Well, I can't
mysteries.
Mysteries. Okay, now we put the mother clip in the beginning of the video. No,
yeah.
Jehovah's Witnesses. You got to know you do have a divine female that you worship, but it's the organization. So covered.
Find the scripture worshiping the Queen of Heaven.
Covered.
That was the one of Jeremiah. Okay, Revelation, the woman giving birth.
Covered.
Jehovah's wife.
And we also covered the woman giving the blessing. So we did cover that from the book of Isaiah.
Yeah. The group of priestesses of Mary's.
Covered.
Yeah. The heavenly Jerusalem bringing the divine feminine. Yeah.
Covered.
Yeah. Do Jehovah's Witnesses believe in the divine feminine? Technically,
yes, you do. Yep. In the Apostle Paul.
Connection to divine feminine.
Covered it all.
So thank you. Oh, I know.
I don't think we have to do a part 2 because I think we pretty much picked up every one of our books that we had laid out here as a reference.
Well, I've got a few more over there, but it basically covers the same thing.
Yeah.
Even in Watchtower's book, The Mankind's Search for God, they mention how these other religions worshiping the Queen of Heaven.
The divine woman.
Yeah.
Mary, the mother of God. Jehovah's heavenly wife-like. Figurative. See, that's how they have to destroy it. See, this is just figurative because we can't look like any other religion that does worship the divine female. We can't look like them, so they said, oh, this is figurative. But Jehovah has a wife.
Yeah. Yeah.
Give me a break, Watchtower. We're not stupid anymore.
Yeah. And if you come across this book, I believe it's available online on a PDF because this book was written in the 1800s. But it's really interesting because he gets into where some of these ancient beliefs come from. Now, he was never a witness, and it's covered from like the aspect of the Catholic Church. So he's bringing out the pagan things that the Catholic Church celebrates. And it's interesting because he goes into like the Druids, their worship, their beliefs, and all of this. So it's a really interesting book that I think we need to read again because we haven't read it since we first came out in 2012.
Since we first woke up, exactly. Yeah. I mean, it would be good to go back over some of these books that we read when we did first wake up because we have learned so much more since then. And we've peeled back those layers of the onion, and it's like, wow. Once you peel back this layer, you've gained so much more knowledge. But then when you go back and read something like this again, it's like, wow, here's another layer I can peel back.
Now, the book that Watchtower quoted in their bond volume there in 2014, the book called The Temple, I'm going to put the link down below because, like I said, I did find it, and I found the PDF online. And if I find Alexander Hislop's The Two Babylons book in a PDF, I will put the link down below to that one also. These are interesting books because these were written in the 1800s. So even back then they knew this stuff.
They knew back then.
So that tells me that Russell and Rutherford knew this stuff too.
Yep.
And that's why they had to do all this creative pretzel twisting.
Exactly. To get you away from the fact that you still worship the divine feminine. I mean, there's just no two ways about it.
Yeah. Yep. Exactly. So thank you everyone so much for watching this long video. I'm not sure, if we will do any more videos on this, but I know a lot of you like to do research on this, and you will probably be sending it to us. So we might possibly, but it will be, with your guys' research.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah, and there is a lot more scriptures, that cover this. Like I said, this is only the stuff that we have done just in the past 2 days.
Yeah.
There's so much more that would take weeks and weeks to cover.
So Watchtower's really validating ancient mythology. That's all they're doing.
Yeah, at the same time, demeaning
Women.
women and children.
Yep, exactly.
Women and children.
Yep.
And, what happened? What happened to the respect of women and the equalizing, the equal partnership of the male and the female? What happened to that? Just gotta ask. So thank you everybody, and thank you for your love and support and emails and comments. We appreciate it. We love you. Bye.
Excuse me, before we go, and may the Queen of Heaven provide a very blessed day for all of you.
Well, also Mother Earth.
To Mother Earth. It's all there, friends.
Yeah.
It's all there.
Yeah. It's all part of it. So, goodbye this time for real.
Bye.
Bye.